Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to be learning about perimeter. So, our first question is, well, what is perimeter? Perimeter is the distance around a shape. And I have a yellow rectangle with the word perimeter in there to highlight it. If I wanted to know the distance around this yellow rectangle, I would be measuring the outside of the rectangle. Now, we also have to understand that when we calculate length on anything, we want to include a unit of measure. So, before we talk about units of measure, though, let's look at this garden. Let's just say, let's just make this story that this father has this beautiful garden beginning to grow in his backyard, but there are some pesty rabbits eating away at his plants. So he wants to go to either Home Depot or Lowe's and buy a netting that would go directly on the perimeter or the outside of his fence. Well, let's just say that he goes over to the clerk and asks and says, "Well, I my garden is 7 plus 4 plus 6 plus 4, 21." Well, the clerk would look at him kind of crazy and say, "21 what?" That what, boys and girls, is your unit. So now that I'm looking at it, I see that it's feet. Therefore, now he would be able to tell the clerk or the person at Home Depot or Lowe's, "Oh, I need 21 feet of wire mesh to go around my garden." So that word feet, that unit of measure there is very important because feet is quite different than inches or millimeters or centimeters, etc. Some examples of units of measurements would include feet, inches, centimeters, yards, miles, kilometers, etc., etc. Therefore, when calculating a length or the distance around an object, finding the perimeter around an object is very important in knowing the units that we are talking. Now let's practice measuring perimeter using just simple polygons. Polygons are shapes with straight edges, and I have here a scalene triangle. One side is 6 inches, one side is 7 inches, one side is 9 inches. So this is a three-sided polygon. And so all I simply would have to do then is measure 7 plus 9 plus 6, which would equal 22. And I cannot forget to include my unit of measure, which is inches. So this would be the perimeter of the scalene triangle would be 22 inches. So now we're going to practice measuring perimeter on a rectangle. Now, this rectangle I'm looking at, and it has only two measurements. But I also know that a rectangle is a four-sided figure. And we have previously learned that two sets of parallel sides. Therefore, I know that if this side is 10 feet, the opposite side is also 10 feet. Same going with 3 feet plus 3 feet. That's why this four-sided figure, this four-sided polygon, when I measure the perimeter, I am going to be measuring four sides, 10 plus 10 plus 3 plus 3, and altogether then it is 26 feet. And we cannot forget that unit of measure, that because we need to know the difference between feet and other units of measure. So now let's get fancy. When I say fancy, we're going to use a formula. And formulas are nice because we just have to start plugging in numbers. Now you notice I did add some letters here. I put an L, L, W, W. Well, what would that stand for? If I'm measuring the perimeter of something around an object, I am going to be measuring the length plus width plus width. I can make that a little bit easier because I could just start plugging in numbers, because what we did really was we multiplied, because there are two sides of length, 2 times length, plus then we did 2 sides of width, because it's a four-sided figure. So I said 2 times length plus 2 times width equals perimeter. So if I'm plugging in numbers, like I said previously, I'm looking at my 10 and I'm going to, if this is my formula, I know I have to multiply it by 2 because it's 2 sides of length. So it would be 2 times 10, which is 20, plus 2 times 3, which equals 6, and together it did total 26 feet. Now, finding the perimeter around squares is really kind of fun, because we know that a square is a four-sided figure with all four sides being equal. So if I get a square, I know that if all I need is one side of measurement. Now, we could do the old fashioned way of finding perimeter. We could say 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 20 centimeters. Again, we can't forget that unit of measure. That is perfect. That is perfect way of finding perimeter. But I also am seeing that if there is a formula for a rectangle, there is an easier way of finding perimeter with a square. I can simply add the amount of sides, which is 4, and multiply it by the measurement, which is 5. So 4 sides times 5 centimeters equals 20 centimeters. So, boys and girls, the formula I used was 4 times S equals P, which is the total number of equal sides, 4, times the length of each side, which was 5, equals the perimeter, which was 20 centimeters.